All right, we're gonna go ahead and start with the presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to hear Daniel speak. So let me just introduce him really quickly. Daniel Barreiros is an associate professor at the Institute of Economics, Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He is also our current president of the International Big History Association. Yes. So Daniel, I'm going to hand it off to you, and you can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. So hello, I'm Daniel Barreiros, president of the International Big History Association. I'm associate professor at the Federal.
We are on mic. They can hear us. We can't hear them.
The topic of this presentation is object-oriented ontology and big history. How do the cosmos, life, and humanity become one? My main goal here is to understand how big history and big historians frame, conceive, and understand the nature of their objects of investigation in this all-encompassing full-spectrum research field. There's a phrase that's very common. It appears on big history related websites, articles, and books that says that big history is a study that seeks to understand and integrate the history of the cosmos, the earth, life, and humanity. This phrase is very important in terms of the research field identity, because it's how most big historians understand what big history is. And this phrase conveys the idea that big history is a chronological narrative, or maybe a set of chronological narratives from the Big Bang to the present. And as a long chronological narrative, big history brings together many different objects of investigation, many different theories, many different aspects of science and human knowledge that probably can't mix well. I think that's a problem, and I'll discuss this problem in this presentation. As a chronological narrative, big history is organized around key concepts like thresholds and regimes. We all know that. These concepts are very important because in a long narrative like that, big history can become too loose, and these concepts can bring some stability and coherence. And after 30 years of big history developments, what's the state of the art? It seems that big history is now taking different paths. I won't discuss them all, but I will discuss one of these paths. Big history seems to be, or maybe it's becoming, a Lacatosian transdisciplinary research program. A Lacatosian named after Imre Lakatos, a philosopher of science from the 20th century. As a Lacatosian research program, big history has a theoretical core based on the notions of complexity and evolution. And every research program, every Lacatosian research program has a theoretical core with different concepts and theories. And in the case of big history, complexity and evolution play that role. And around this theoretical core, there's a protective belt of auxiliary hypotheses and assumptions that are adjusted to respond to new data and empirical challenges every time these empirical challenges and new data threaten the integrity of the theoretical core, threaten the ideas of complexity and evolution. The protective belt is used as a mechanism to adapt the theoretical core to changes in terms of empirical evidence, of new data, etc. Big history has objects, perspectives, and theories that are shared by academics from different disciplinary backgrounds. And its main objective could be, if big history becomes a research program, to develop an analytical framework for investigating the transformation of objects over time, different objects in different time frames. But whether as a research, sorry, okay, no problem, okay. But whether as a research program or as a chronological narrative, big history stands on an unstable ontological base, because its objects of analysis are very wide-ranging, coming from different disciplinary traditions with these different ontologies that are not compatible. History tries to make a comprehensive, natural, and human.
Daniel, sorry, are you changing the slides?
Which can be a problem. Can you hear me, folks?
Yes, we can hear you, but are you going through the slides, or are you still on the title slide?
Yes, I'm lowering to the slides, but okay. Now I see what's happening.
Can you share screen?
Yes, I have share. Okay. Now you can see it. No, can you see it changing?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. No. Yes. Okay. Sorry for that. Okay. 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 Let me go to the slide 4. So I was saying that big history stands on shaky ontological grounds, because the objects big history analyze, they come from different disciplinary traditions with different ontologies, and it represents a problem, philosophically speaking, to big history. So who or what makes history? We have two options. If non-humans without agency, and I use the quotation marks on the slide, because I totally disagree with this statement, but if non-humans without agency, but producing effects, are the agents of history, then traditionally we have natural history. But if humans with free will, volition, and rational agency are the agents of history, then we have classical Western historiography. And these two set of objects, they don't mix. They're ontologically apart. They are separated. You can't force this merging. It won't work ontologically because they are conceived as having different natures. Then big history has two options. It can subsume one set of objects into another. For example, by claiming that the whole of human history can be subsumed to biological or physical phenomena. So social biologists do that, stating that all human behavior is subsumed to genes, or at least most of human behavior. And option 2, big history becomes a patchwork. And I think that big history now looks like that. It's fragmented. It's not ontologically coherent. Big history, of course, is, as we all know, spiritually inspiring, scientifically inspiring, but ontologically it's not coherent. And so neither of these options is satisfactory, submitting one object to another or accepting that big history can remain ontologically fragmented. I'm pretty sure that we can do better than that. So, in my opinion, big history seems now ontologically fuzzy. Big history seems to resist clear ontological reflection. There isn't much philosophy of science being practiced within the big history epistemic community. Big historians are not very eager to think about what they do, how they think, or what are the things that they think about. They don't seem, it's my opinion, of course, it's open to debate, but they don't seem really inclined to reflect on these things. Big history seems really resistant to ontological reflection. And big history also seems to be still fractured between the social sciences, humanities, and the natural sciences. For example, big historians from the social sciences and those from the natural science, they tend to have different research interests and different ways of approaching their objects of investigation, which are not compatible all the time. And I think that part of this fracture can be attributed to the insufficient engagement with reflective analysis on the subjects of inquiry in big history research. Big historians, at least in my opinion, they don't seem very interested in thinking about that. And it brings us to the topic of this presentation, that is object-oriented ontology. Object-oriented ontology is part of the so-called speculative realism, which is very recent theoretical trend in philosophy of science. Speculative realism emerged as some sort of reaction to a radical emphasis on humans in history and philosophy, a reaction against a radical emphasis on humans in all aspects of knowledge. Object-oriented ontology, or OOO, it's an acronym, is a possible ontological approach to big history. It's not, of course, the only one, but I think it's an ontological approach that can help us to solve this conundrum about this historical agency. Graham Harman, Ian Bogost, and Jane Bennett are three of the most important authors in this field. They are not the only ones, of course, but are the three authors that I think are the most representative of this field. The OOO affirms itself as a non-modern philosophy, and I think that's the most important aspect of the OOO, a non-modern ontology. The OOO, being a non-modern ontology, the OOO rejects postmodernism, but it also rejects the biases of the scientific modernity. And I think the history should also be understood as a non-modern research program that rejects both the radical relativism of postmodernity and the biases of the scientific modernity. One of them, for example, the divide between culture and nature. This division the division between culture and nature is one of the pillars of the scientific modernity. And big history, in all its versions, tries to bridge this gap and center the human from history. Of course, culture and nature are not poles, but are enmeshed objects, are entangled objects. So let's speak first about what the OOO rejects, and after that we can speak about what the OOO adopts. First, the OOO rejects social constructivism. The OOO rejects the notion that ideas produce reality. Of course, ideas are part of reality, of course. They act on reality, but they do not produce reality as it is. Not even social reality, and this is very important because not even social reality is produced by ideas. Considering that social reality, as any kind of reality, is multidimensional. It depends on many different processes. So the OOO is not social constructivist, but it also rejects the immediacy of reality. It means, for example, that the OOO affirms that the reality of things, the reality of the universe itself is withdrawn. It's beyond science, it can't be grasped. The reality of the universe, of all things that exist, is withdrawn from the sensible dimension of the reality, from the sensible dimension of real objects. Science can only apprehend the sensible dimension of real objects because science is evidence-based, and evidence is sensible. It's apprehended by the senses. We must hear, we must feel, we must count what is heard and seen. We must use our senses to grasp this sensible reality. So the sensible aspect of objects is not inferior to the real aspect of objects. There's no hierarchy between them. They are on the same level, so to say. And the real remains the same regardless of the infinite sensible apprehensions. We can eternally discuss the real nature of a given object, but we will never exhaust this discussion because we are debating sensible emanations. We're not debating the real object. Our different apprehensions of an object do not change the real nature of this object. A real object allows for infinite sensible apprehensions, and it might appear very different to different observers depending on many situational conditions. The real object remains the same, regardless of how we interpret its emanations. These real objects can change in time, and so do sensible apprehensions of this object. But when the reality of the objects change, it's highly probable that the new sensible apprehensions emerge. But the fact is that changing or not, new sensible apprehensions are being produced all the time. So the OOO states there is a gap between knowledge and the real objects. And this gap is unbridgeable. Science cannot overcome this gap because science deals with sensible emanation of objects. There is no war, no struggle, no race towards the knowledge of the real thing. We cannot know what the reality of things is. But we can know, of course, about sensible manifestations of these objects. We can study, for example, I don't know, stellar radiation. We can measure this radiation. We can take pictures of a star. We can, I don't know, study the corona of the sun. But neither of these are real, are the real star, are just sensible, apprehendable manifestations of an object that scientists conventionally decided to call a star. Reality is withdrawn, and as such, it allows its sensible apprehension by infinite angles, perspectives, evidence-based points. And that's what the OOO rejects. And what the OOO adopts? The OOO adopts a flat ontology. And it means that all objects, whether human, non-human, material, or immaterial, are ontologically on the same level. There's no hierarchy between them. They all deserve the same attention from the sciences, from every field of knowledge that embraces the OOO. For example, myths, people, characters from fictional works, machines, economic systems, non-human animals, they are all objects, they all share a common nature, although they are different in their specificities. This common nature makes them comparable. And I'll tell you about this common nature in the next slide. What are objects? In the OOO, objects are anything concrete or abstract that cannot be reduced to its components, which means that they cannot be undermined. Undermining is a process of reducing an object to its components. For example, we humans are stardust. No, we are not. Society is nothing other than the interaction of human beings. No, it's not. Because societies and humans are emergent objects, and emergent objects are not determined by the nature of their components. So the OOO is an emergentist ontology, and the concept of emergence is fundamental to this ontological perspective. Objects cannot also be reduced to the effects they produce on other objects, which means overmining. Objects can't be overmined. They can't be reduced to the effects they produce. For example, human behavior is a product of society. No, it's not, because society is an emergent object. And an emergent object does not determine the nature of its components. So objects, according to the OOO, are ontologically self-contained. They can be studied in themselves. They don't need to be undermined or overmined to be explained. Actually, overmining and undermining do not explain complex entities at all. So it's my belief that the OOO can provide big history with a renewed, up-to-date ontological basis that escapes from this, I don't know, gravitational pull of the traditional controversy over historical agency between the natural sciences and the social sciences. It allows big history to promote a broad spectrum comparativist perspective, able to compare many different things. It allows big history to criticize, which is very important, to criticize the conventional Western historiography with its focus on human exceptionalism, but it also allows big history to criticize the undermining attempts by the natural sciences to reduce history to physical and biological phenomena. So it's my understanding, it's my opinion that by placing the concept of emergence at the center of ontological explanation, the OOO seems to be an ontological perspective finally tuned to big history. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me, Daniel?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to open it up first. We just have a few minutes. Through no fault of your own, of course, we were having audio issues. So we have about 5 minutes. I'm going to take 10:45 for some questions. So let me first ask the folks who are here in Oklahoma if there are any questions that you may want to ask to Daniel. Gustavo, I'm going to give you the mic so that the folks online can hear you as well.
Thank you very much for the talk. I wonder how the Karl Popper's three words, word one, word two, word three classification, how does that fit at all? It fits at all with the object-oriented word?
Paul, I can't hear him.
Daniel, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, thank you very much for the talk. I wonder if Karl Popper's three words point of view fits at all with the object-oriented ontology. Popper talks about word one, things that are tangible, word two, the ideas we have in word.
I'm really sorry, but the audio is not okay. I can't hear.
Okay, don't worry.
Really sorry.
We'll talk in another moment. We're short of time. We type the questions into the chat.
You can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please.
If there are folks online who may have a question, perhaps you can put it in the chat or even unmute yourself. Maybe that might work as well.
To go back, sorry, I missed something. To go back to the slide on undermining and overmining.
Daniel, can you go back to the slide on undermining and overmining?
Yes, I can. I will share my screen again.
Progress.
Here? This one?
Yes.
Okay.
So another question I have is, do you have some particular examples of objects that really illustrate your point most simply? Someone here was asking about whether the wars, stuff like that, fits your definition of objects could be treated like objects like this, but I'm thinking that you probably have some simpler examples. I'm wondering if you do.
Yeah, the examples of objects are infinite because the way you define an object is procedural. The objects are not there. Because if you assume an OOO perspective, everything, literally everything can be an object of inquiry. Because as long as these objects of inquiry are not overmined or undermined, they can be analyzed. They do not exist in the world actually they exist in the world, but we don't know exactly what they are because their reality is withdrawn. For example, we can talk here, we can study this microphone in front of me. It seems like a microphone because I know I'm perceiving some spectrum, some electromagnetic spectrum that shows me visually that there is something here, and I call this microphone. This name doesn't come from nature. I call it microphone. But if you can analyze chemically this microphone, you can analyze it by its its electronic properties. You can, I don't know, its weight. You can think about the symbolic and ideational perspectives of a microphone. What it represents in Western culture. The objects they emanate so many different sensible aspects that can be apprehended. But observe that I defined the object. It's an Abrahamic act, I define. It's an Adamic actually act. I point and I define. This is an object. So we can think about, war, society, global society, thermodynamics, anything. Anything can be an object because the universe is inhabited by objects that we don't know exactly what they are because we can't know. Our senses are limited. We used to see the world, we used to see the universe, we used to understand the world and the universe as we see it, as we see them, but they are not that. Can we prove that? No, we can't. But it's ontology, it's not science. It's about a prioris. It's not about conclusions. So you should think about the OOO much more as a philosophical stance towards science rather than something. No, it's not science. Was I clear? Was I clear? In the sense you asked me, everything can be an object, and everything can be studied by big history if big history becomes a research program. As I said, it's not yet. We are not there yet, but maybe one day.
Yes, I definitely do understand your point. I'm just thinking that some objects are maybe make better examples than others. Like for example, a microphone is maybe hard because most of us don't really know how one works. So I'm just thinking that I guess it was occurring to me that maybe a ship might be a really good example because one can reduce it to its parts. It's made of these wooden beams or this fiberglass hull. It's got these sails or this engine.
Yeah.
And a ship is something people can understand, but the idea it represents can be wildly different. That if you're trying to, if you desire to go to travel, well, the ship represents your ideas about traveling. If you're waiting for supplies to arrive by winter, well, then the ship represents trade and food for the winter. Or if you're watching a sailboat race, it represents sportsmanship and but any of these ships can be reduced to what they're composed of, and details like that. It might be a simpler example. I like to always show things by examples, and I'm thinking you might end up coming across certain examples that really epitomize the concept most simply.
So let's go simple. A quark. Let's go simple. You can overmine a quark, but hardly you can undermine it, But it is a matter of the natural properties of this object, or we can't actually think about what things form a quark. I'm not a physicist, so I can't, can't be saying, I might be wrong, but every time we think of an object, we automatically overmine and undermine the object. It's something compulsive. Humans do that all the time. The most important thing about OOO is that you can't exhaust a definition about an object, the nature of an object by recurring to any of these undermining or overmining procedures, And of course, and the best, the objects are important according to the questions that are made. For example, a microphone can be something simple, everyone knows, or everyone thinks they know what a microphone is, but we know what it does, but we don't know exactly what it is. We can reduce it to these components. We can, break this microphone here, and see all these, these electronic components that are inside, but we don't know what it is because we can't know what it is. No? But if I'm studying microphones or I'm studying, I don't know, technology, microphones can become a legitimate object. Yes, that is. It's hard to tell what objects are the simple. It's hard to tell if there are objects that are more simple than others.
Daniel, thank you so much for your
Right.
talk and for responding to our questions. We will have a quick break and then return with our second speaker. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone.
I'll just leave it running.